I would probably say, if you would have asked me this 2 years ago, I'd probably say 70-30 top of funnel versus retargeting. So it's changed substantially, but we just really minimized our exclusions, try not to do too much stuff. Because we found if we, got too simple, too complex for 3-day, 7-day, 14-day retargeting buckets, which used to work killer, it's just too much. So I'd rather just exclude purchases and let it, if an ad works for top of funnel, let it retarget too. I don't care as long as it converts, and it's making us money.
All right, folks, we're back with your favorite D2C podcast. I am coming to you live from London, Ash Mawani's old stomping grounds. He's giving me all the tips over here. I got to go to the first Soho house, which was fantastic. I got to see, I don't know if you guys know this, but Texas was actually a republic for 3 years. And there's an actual embassy that was built here for the Texas embassy. So I got to go see that. Pretty cool little tidbit. Yeah, maybe we'll have the editor cut in the picture of the place. I got to see the oldest wine shop in London. So we just had our roadshow out here. That's why I'm out here. But I'll be coming back home soon. And speaking about coming back home, we brought on one of my favorite Austinites, Dylan Carpenter. Dylan, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm pumped we're finally doing this. I feel like we're all in the same circle, but so it's kind of cool to bring it all together,
Yeah, well, kind of the same circle. You're spending real money. I'm spending chump change over here compared to you. So I really want to get into kind of how you're spending at scale, just kind of dive into some ads and then kind of see where it flows. What do you think, Ash?
Yep, love it.
Amazing. So I guess for a little background for people that don't know you, Dylan, kind of what do you do? What's your story? Kind of tell people that a little bit to give them some color, and then we'll jump in.
Yeah, totally. So I've been doing ads for 6 or 7 years now. I randomly fell into it. I was almost a custom suit tailor in Orlando. I played ice hockey, so I love suits and shit. So basically, I was like, custom suit guy, that'll be me. I'm glad I turned that one down. Ended up getting a job at Facebook here in Austin. Worked there for a year, dipped out, did my own thing, launched an agency, partnered with a white label agency, did the volume-based model with 250 accounts at one time, managing multiple teams, and I got really burnt out because with white label, margins are tight, retainers are really low. So after doing that for a while, I went all in on my agency, Quality Media. Got tired of the agency game, so now I kind of really do more freelance and contract, kind of gun for hire stuff. I work with 8 to 9 brands, all 7-8 figures, selling dinnerware, men's health, ED pills, stuffed animals, fitness products, you name it. I've ran ads for it. But I probably spend 60-70K a day. I would say no less than $2 million a month in ad spend. Some accounts spend 300K, some are at 700K, so it kind of depends. It's case by case, but I kind of moved back from that agency model to more of the quality approach versus quantity, just because it's way less work on my end. I don't have the crazy agency fees. I kind of bake myself into these businesses. Plus my margins are super awesome. And I just kind of lay low, run ads and test a bunch of stuff. And I'm really scrappy, and, my partners and clients seem to love it. So it's a definitely good fit for what I like to do.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. That is a really cool story. So in terms of, is this strictly on shout out Liquid Death? They're actually, I finally got to connect there. I'm so happy.
That's a Modelo, by the way. No, I'm just kidding.
Don't you, have you ever gotten that before though? Where you're on a client call and you smash one and you're like, dude, it's noon. What's going on here? You're like, no, it's water. And you have to unwind it.
I've been pulled over with it too. And a cop was like, are you really drinking? I'm like, it's water. I swear to God, but yeah, I love that shit.
Are you spending primarily on Facebook, or is this across multiple channels, or how do you deploy your spend?
Yeah, so I would say 90% of it's Facebook and Instagram. That's my bread and butter. A little bit on Snapchat, and maybe 5 or 6K a day on TikTok, so nothing crazy. And that's across maybe 3 brands. So normally I'll hook up TikTok or Snapchat with them, and I'm like, let's try it for free. My retainers are already kind of hefty, and I'll just test the waters. And if it works after a month or two, we'll come with a plan with it, and then I can kind of charge for that side of things. But it's a really good way to kind of test the waters on TikTok, see if it works, and then they make money and I make money off it. But I would say, 90% plus is definitely Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, that's amazing. Take me through kind of, so you bring on a client, and then how do you just already start spending at these multiple commas in the account, or is there a scale up strategy, or how do you approach that?
Yeah, it depends. So they're either in that efficiency stage or scale stage. So efficiency, for example, I just brought on a really fun gardening brand. badass modern stuff. You can grow herbs and veggies in your house basically. So I
Oh,
mean,
that's
they're
cool.
spending 100K a month, and I brought them on at the start of this month, and we cut the budget in half. Their CAC was maybe like 480 to $500, and it's literally within the first 2 weeks. All I did was just shut off what wasn't working. They had a lot of different campaigns, ad sets, so I cut off maybe 80% of things. Ramped up the budgets for what was working. So we went from 100K to 50K a month realistically, and CAC is now at like 160, 170. So it's
Oh,
dropped pretty
wow.
substantially. And we just brought in some new ads for them this week, and those are getting, 105 to $110 CACs. So normally whenever I bring on an account, some do want to keep that throttle up, some want to kind of cut it in half just because it's a big curve for them to kind of bring on somebody new, and whenever they bring me on, something is usually up. Realistically, they're not going to fire their agency if everything's all sunflowers and dandelions basically. So
Yeah.
there are usually
Yeah.
a little bit of things to fix, but it really depends on the scenario. But yeah, I mean, a good handful of the accounts, if they're spending 300K a month, they just want to continue that, and it's kind of more just efficiency and just slimming up the ad account, getting it more structured. I would say 9 times out of 10, whenever I dive into an account and just kind of clean it up, that does wonders enough, even with
Yeah.
zero fresh assets. So that's usually the first move. See how the structure kind of does with the current assets, and then we start introducing our new stuff. So it's kind of a different phase approach, but I mean, we can see stats within 5 to 6 days, especially with those budgets. I mean, it's really quick.
Yeah.
So
That's a great point.
I was in Costa. It took me 2 hours to do this one account. Went to Costa Rica for a week. Didn't touch shit. Came back. CACs look phenomenal.
Yeah.
Now it's the creative time. So I mean, we're not making that drastic of changes, but enough to move the needle and really, bring down the acquisition costs.
I feel like
Chad media
that's
buyer. I
the
love it.
story for a lot of people, right? It's like just simplify the account and you could easily see performance lift like right away. I think one of the cool things that I like talking to other media buyers is like just to see is the main strategy very similar across like some of these heavy hitters, or does everybody have their own like secret sauce, right? So when it comes down to testing and scaling, maybe we'll start with testing, right? What does your testing strategy typically look like? How much are you testing a week, structure wise, content wise? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so it's evolved, to be honest with you. And to answer that first point, for an account I have spending 700K a month, we only have 3 campaigns going, maybe 6 ad sets max. They're just fat, like 5 to 7K daily budgets. And I have the exact same structure for an account spending 30K a month and just slimmer budgets, and it works. So, but from a creative testing perspective, what I used to do is kind of house it in its own bucket. I have a creative testing campaign. That's always one of my own campaigns that come from an ad bank. I build all the ads within there, get the post IDs, then bring them to the creative testing side of things. But normally we'll test 4 to 5 assets a week, nothing too crazy, which means 4 to 5 new ad sets. I just put one ad per ad set, go broad, wide open, force that budget to it. I'll start at 50 to 100
Is
bucks
that
a day.
ABO?
Yeah, only I'm 99% ABO. Yeah.
Whoa, really?
Oh yeah,
See, that's why I
it's
like
more to
asking, because everyone's different.
That's interesting.
it's a lot more to micromanage, but it works better. I don't care if it involves more work. Really, if it works, it works. But recently, I did end up changing that kind of sequence out, where run one ad per ad set, kill off after 5 or 6 days. And what I'll do for the winners in that scenario is I'll just bring them to our main kind of control campaign, which is literally just broad and maybe an interest stack. I don't use lookalikes as much anymore. So it's a never ending cycle on that side of things. But what really ramped up our creative testing is I usually always get statics and videos. So now I just, have one ad set. I'll have a static ad in there and a video ad in there. Sometimes different copies, sometimes the same, but they're pretty just different ad sets. So I've definitely been finding I'm scaling these up now in our creative testing campaign. So start at $100 a day, go up 20% every single day as long as it's working. So I have been finding having those two completely fresh, different angle, assets in that same ad set is doing wonders for us versus just one single ad. It's also, I feel like, honestly, working the algorithm better because I can kind of scale that up a lot more of a longer duration and a lot quicker versus having that lone ad in there. That's kind of hit or miss daily. So as of right now, like I'm doing some creative testing today. I got 6 new assets. We're just going to have 3 new ad sets basically. Have those 2 ads in the mix there and just start cranking her up pretty much. and that's a never-ending cycle. Because sometimes I'll bring our creative testing ads into our control campaign. Honestly, sometimes I don't. What I'm always worried about is just, hey, if we have the same ad here and then the same ad here, there's probably going to be some issues and kind of fighting over it from a
Right.
overlap perspective. I don't think that matters until you're spending like over 10K a day realistically, but those are the accounts I kind of see those issues in. So I mean, I have some creative tests that have been going for over 3 months that are spending $1,000 a day. That started off at $50 to $75 a day. So I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
So then how do you create a control campaign then if like you're just leaving the winners in the testing?
Yeah, so it's 50-50. So sometimes I bring those, creative test winners into this because for the most part, I really don't start swapping things in until I see that control campaign struggling, whether it's usually from a creative level. So if I see one of our top performers that's slowly just decaying, we'll look at this week, last week, 7 days, 14 days, 30 days. And if I just see that trend going down, that's when I know it's time to kind of swap it out. So I mean, sometimes I don't have to add anything in there, but it really depends on that kind of control campaign's performance strictly from an ad level. Because I don't touch ad sets or audiences. I really don't. Maybe once a quarter, once every 2 quarters. It's really just a creative game there. But I definitely live by that motto. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I mean, if we're getting good performance there and that creative testing is doing good, I don't want to mess up anything on either side. So I'll just kind of feed the beast there.
So that's one thing where I kind of fall to where the creative testing was doing really well. The scaling campaign is doing really well. Now it's like, do I take a chance at like fucking up with the account and adding another test, right? Or adding more tests, right? Do you ever find that to be the case? And like, what do you do? Like, hey, you have 5 more assets that, your team produced for you. Are you like going to test that regardless? Are you going to kind of add it in there? Or is it like, okay, well, I can only limit to X amount of ad sets. I don't want to have too much running in the account. That's like always been my predicament of like, I don't want to be running too much if something's working, but I know at some point it's not. So I need to continue testing.
That's the motto I go by for everything but the creative testing. I have one account, I have probably 12 ad sets active, so over 24 ads into the mix there, and they're all just doing so good. A lot of them have different pain points, angles. I work with Sarah Levenger. I don't know if y'all see her on on Twitter,
this is the
probably.
best.
But
Yeah,
she does a lot of cool customer research stuff and kind of shared some stuff with me. I'm just going through like TikTok comments because those are the most, honest and ruthless. So we'll go in there and just find what pain points they're looking at. So, I mean, when it comes to our creative tests, they're all pretty different to an extent. So I'm not too worried about having too many of the same pain points and angles all at once. Now, yeah, that simplified structure that definitely works for like our more control kind of or scaling side of things. But for the creative testing, I don't worry about it as much because originally I did, but once I started adding more and more, like we have campaigns for people who just moved, people for registry and gifts for weddings. So they're all pretty different in their own bucket. And then the other, obstacle I run into is we have Canada versus US, for example, for some accounts where I've never merged those together. I keep them separate. And the reason I have to do that is because our URLs are separate. It just involves less friction going to the website with custom URLs. And then we have all the pricing on the creatives themselves. And this brand is Fable Home, for example. We have different prices for Canada versus US. So when I am creative testing, I do everything twice. So it looks a lot more messy in there. But as long as the CACs are good and, we definitely look at a lot of different sources of truth, essentially. UTMs on GA are our favorite things to do. We're kind of getting on motion for the creative testing side of things, but I look at everything on the ads reporting side for 7-day click, 1-day view, and then 7-day click. We're only tracking maybe 70 or 80%, but with what we're spending, the volume is still easy enough to kind of tell what's working realistically. So it is case by case, but for the creative testing side, I get really scrappy. And that's what I do on TikTok too. I just have one ad per ad set. So I got like probably 30 to 40 active ad sets, and I just kill off what's not working or ramp up what is because that structure just doesn't seem to work these days. For me, at least. It's different for everybody, but having, 2 or 3 top, audiences, 5 or 6 ads within each, hypothetically, it sounds like it's going to work great, but we just can't get it consistent.
that's so interesting. So you take the Sarah Levenger brain dump and then you manifest them into some sort of creative, whether that be a static and a video. You have a fairly simplified campaign structure. ABO blows my mind though. That's so interesting to me. Do you ever fuck with cost caps or any kind of bid caps, cost controls, anything like that? Or you just raw dog it?
Raw dog it all day long and just hope I pull out in time, bro. No, I mean I have been seeing some guys having success with cost caps. I have it in my
Yeah.
notes to test it, but it's that same scenario. I would go broad and probably go 2x or CAC goal, maybe 3x, just to kind of test the waters with it. But it's that same function of a lot of things are working for us right now. I honestly think I really only have one account that's really struggling, and I think it's just due to a big website revamp. Everything's consistent, but conversion rates dropped. So I mean, things aren't as pretty as, what they were during COVID, but we're still seeing really good stats to where I could continue to test some wacky things, but I don't want to go overboard with it. So I kind
Mm-hmm.
of
Right.
wait for that indication of, hey, things are kind of going downhill, not before it's too late, but let me try some more scrappier things, which on my list is the cost cap side of things. But if it's working, I really don't want to pull too many random things out. I'd rather just ramp up the budget of what's working, basically.
Question. So, for the accounts that are performing well, do you find that there's similar characteristics between the brand, or like when I say that, I mean, like, is it typically like a higher AOV? Is it, consumables, or is it purely based on just like, all right, here's what we're running in the account, simplified structure, and this is why it's converting well?
They have really good products and really good AOVs, and then really good returning customer rates. So I think those are the big three kind of pillars I look into these days. I mean, I have some beauty and cosmetics, and the days of getting 3 to 4x consistently are over. We kind
Yeah.
of try and break even on the front end, knowing people are going to come
Mm-hmm.
back. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the brands I have that are doing really well and scaling up, they do more for one of the brands is, stuffed animals for kids' emotional growth. So they have a really good brand message and lots of products to where if they try one, they're going to want to try more for, emotional growth, kids going with parents going through divorce. So we have all these subsets within that specific brand. Another one is Rougiette, the men's health brand. It's custom compounded medicine. So it's Viagra and Cialis on steroids. It's very different than what guys are used to. So it's so innovative and different. So a lot of the brands are, of course, high AOV, which I love. They have really good
Mm-hmm.
returning customer rates and retention based models there. So it's a lot easier for me to kind of advertise for them versus a generic. We got some sick eyes shadow that are going to make your wings look really good or something. If that answers that.
Got some hot take questions.
Get in there.
What do we think? I saw this, like, somebody tweeted out. Yeah, I think it was Dara who tweeted out yesterday. Learning phase. What are your thoughts on that? Do we take that with a grain of salt? Do we live and die by that? What are we thinking?
I used to think it was a myth. I used to talk so much shit about it. And then I would say maybe at the start of the year, my thoughts started changing to where I'm like, let me get out of the learning phase and see how it goes. And now I'm kind of back in the middle, I would say. I think it's case by case per account, to be honest with you. I do understand the concept of it's just really roughy and, not consistent during that learning phase. And then once you get out of there, it's supposed to be this really consistent and flourish. That's not the case all the time, but we do try and limit our learning phase. Luckily, with that structure and the massive budgets, we can get out of those phases really, really
Mm-hmm.
quick. So
Yeah.
now, before I make any big moves, I do want to make sure we have at least enough data, maybe like 100 to 150 conversions, 50 a week. I don't really care too much about. So, I mean, I think it depends realistically. I'm kind of 50-50 on the fence for it, but I mean, I used to think it was bullshit. Then I was like,
Yeah.
maybe they're actually right. So I started doing more of it. But when it comes to creative testing, you're probably always going to be in learning phase unless you're spending, a
Yeah.
lot more, especially for high AOV products, but it still works great. So
Yeah.
I'm on the fence with it. I think you got to find what works best for that specific account because I have another one where we're literally only in learning phase just because it's so active and I get so many assets every single week. So I mean, I just keep feeding the beast and I mean, we could get out of it and see what happens, but I mean, it's not affecting us at all.
What's your take, Ash?
I think if I can have 80 to 90% of my budget outside of the learning phase, which is most likely going to be the scale campaigns, I'm
Mm-hmm.
happy with that. The rest of it, like 10 to 20%, is going to be on testing, right? So exactly like you said, it's not gonna typically not come out of learning phase. Obviously, the ones that do are typically the winners, right? Um, but I mean, like some of our tests will hit learning limited, and there'll be tests that just hit, all right, you're good, active, right? And then to me, it's like I kind of try to think of it black and white, like, hey, if it got out of learning, um, this is probably a winner. So that's why I'll move that to scale and continue down that route. On TikTok, I feel like so 2 weeks ago, right? I think we talked about this in the last pod, but we had like 100 creators reach out to us, and we sent them, creatives, and now we have to test 100 creatives. So first day we launched maybe like 5-6 ad sets. They were doing pretty well. Then the next day we launched another 10, and like things were okay. And then we launched another 10, and like shit just was not converting, right? And so in my head, I was thinking, okay, well, if I'm running like 50 a day per creative and they're getting like 1 or 2 conversions, like I'm definitely not going to get out of learning, right? At least on TikTok. And so I felt that because the majority of the budget was now in learning, there's way more volatility and like just inconsistency. So when I found the initial winners and put them into a scaling campaign where they did get out of learning after like 2-3 days, and then had, again, similar to Facebook, like 10 to 20% of my budget on testing, technically in the learning, things kind of like leveled out. And I don't know if it's coincidence or if it's like really the learning phase, because TikTok isn't as mature as Facebook, so I don't know how much to really rely on that. But I did feel like that ratio of like 80-20 is where we found the sweet spot of like scalable performance. So I agree, like you need to be in the learning, but I feel like to scale you need to be out of it, if that makes sense.
That 20% rule, I think, is crucial. That's one thing we look forward to for any. I know 2 brands we talk to. I mean, they used to have that breakdown in campaign management or whatever, that table section, but I don't even know where it is anymore. But yeah, we used to look for that 20%, and when it's above that, we would usually slim up all of our changes and not do anything too drastic, just because we just saw better trends when it was 20% or less of everything in that learning phase. Whereas I could tell you this time last year, I was probably having 60% in learning phase, and it was still working, but I was in the accounts a lot more, trying to pull a lot more levers to where
Yeah.
I'm finding
Getting
it's a
stuff.
lot more, not on autopilot, but autopilot to an extent with less on learning. And I think that 80-20 is a killer, ratio.
To that point, that last point is you're saying that it's like on autopilot. That's how I feel right now. Like post iOS update, it's kind of goes against the grain when you say this. Like I feel like media buying now is more on autopilot because one, you can't be making too many changes within 3 days, right? Because data doesn't come back within 72 hours. So like if you've set up a test, don't touch it for 3 to 5 days. Then it's like set up your test maybe once a week, or I don't know how often maybe you do it, but it sounds like maybe once a week because you get 4 to 5 creatives, right? I feel like after the update, it got easier because you almost couldn't touch the account multiple times. So it's kind of like oxymoron, I feel.
Oh, and you think about back in the day, I used to day trade ads. If shit's working,
Oh
I'll
yeah,
double the budget
yeah.
4 times in
You
one day.
guys,
So I mean,
Surfing, right?
amazing.
Surfing the budget.
Oh my gosh, you guys are too crazy. No,
yeah.
Shout out to Tim Bird.
shotgun. Let's go, kids. Oh
Surfing and
geez.
shotgunning. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that, Ash. I think that was honestly, and again, there was nothing wrong with day trading, et cetera, et cetera. But that was one of my kind of monikers of a more seasoned media buyer. Like if you're touching your account every day, it's just there's not a lot of time that you could make it work sometimes. But I do think, and you're seeing this as well with Performance Max, right? That's my kind of big thesis for the next 1 to 2 years is I think every self-service platform is basically going to abstract away a lot of the bells, whistles, knobs that you turn, and you basically become this creative analyst essentially, where you're looking at hooks, angles, etc. How can you run your testing strategy, and you're just pushing creatives through this machine that is figuring it out. But the learning phase stuff is interesting because I 100% agree with you guys, but for me, the learning phase didn't matter as much as the budget. Where And so when you're working with these huge budgets, it doesn't really matter. But I was working with clients that were spending, maybe 100K a month or something like that. So not tiny, but not really super relevant budgets. And the big thing for me was making sure that the math actually worked. And so for your point of like
Yeah.
the TikTok is like, just mathematically, there's no way it could get out unless you're getting ridiculously low conversions, which you're not going to get.
Yeah.
And so I'd have people that where they're running all the, and I think it's kind of circling back to your point, Dylan, about campaign simplification and the architecture that you're using, where it's like I would have campaigns where I would go audit people's accounts, and like the math just doesn't work. Like it just isn't going to net out. Like there's no way that you're ever going to get these CPAs. If you're never going to get those CPAs, you're never going to get a learning. And then you just kind of stay in this kind of weird place of like you're just setting yourself up to lose. So I don't know. I think I'm probably more in the Dylan camp of like, I don't know about the learning phase. It seems a little bit of like a nightmare monster. I do think it was a more real thing, I guess, quote unquote, or in the early on days where it's like now when I was running my agency, it was like the last thing I looked at, like, because I just
Yeah.
cared if I was pushing numbers. Like, I don't care what phase it's in. If I'm pushing the numbers, who cares? Like, if something is performing for you, but it's in the learning phase, like, are you going to cut it off? Like, it's kind of like a CPM debate for me, where it's like it kind of matters, but at the same time, like, there's other things that I would look at versus like
Yeah.
my whole goal when I run ads wasn't to get out of the learning phase. It was to drive better CACs or make a bunch of money for
Yeah.
people. And so that's kind of where I kind of fall in that, where I don't know if it's
It's
real or not, but I
secondary.
don't even know if it even matters, right? Like if,
Yeah.
as long as the math works out, especially if you're in those kind of lower budgets, you just need to make sure that you can't actually, get that CPA times your 52-ish conversions type of thing and make sure that you're actually setting yourself up for success. So
One thing that's also interesting that we kind of chatted about from that autopilot perspective is a lot of the brands I bring on come from large agencies and they have a lot going on. And I feel like brand owners are getting smarter to understand this simplification, not so much autopilot, but to an extent side of things. So I feel like this agency model is even getting trickier because everybody's billing the
yeah,
same thing, saying we're doing these daily changes, all of this kind of stuff. So it's getting more and more interesting from that agency angle, which is why I stepped out of it to where, like, I mean, if you're still billing 10% on 300K a month spend, I mean, you're getting a 30K retainer when you're not doing much work versus making it seem like you're doing work. So I don't know where I left with this, but that gives me a big leg up for the kind of business model I have because I can kind of bake myself into them and be straight up with them and not charge those agency fees and let them know everything I'm doing. So it's more transparency on, my end to kind of educate them on, hey, here's how it really is these days. Just because I know so many agencies who charge an arm and a leg and make it sound like they're doing so many changes when it's actually like really hurting the business and they have a badass fucking retainer.
that's a really, really interesting point because that's another thing in terms of I had people, I took over a client when I was running ads. They were getting charged for audience creation. Like I was like, what? And so that's a really interesting point of like, how do you show that you're creating value when before you could say, oh, I'm doing all these bells and whistles. And in a weird way, I think that complexity was a bit of a shield where when you have a simplified campaign architecture, one, incrementality tests are way easier to run, and two, it's way easier to see kind of what's going on. But when you have all of this veiled, really over complex stuff, it's hard to see what's going on in the ad account, especially if that's not what you do.
It's like they're trying to milk it for as long as they can with all these
Yeah.
innovative new tactics when in reality they aren't as much needed. Because I mean, if you look at an agency retention, I mean, I'd be curious. I know in the white label side, our retention was 4 to 5 months maybe, and that was a bitch. And I mean, I'm sure there are other agencies that have better retention, but with this model I have, I mean, no one's fired me for over a year. So I mean, I don't know if it's due to the performance or if I know shit's hitting the fan, just add value in other areas. Agencies have more
Yeah.
skill there because they have more hirees in different areas that could pull some levers, basically. But it's been interesting just because when I first started, there weren't as many agencies. And then it got to a point where everybody and their mom had an agency. And now with the whole ecosystem on the ads platforms changing, it's making everything change on that front to where it's not as set in stone, which is really interesting because a lot of the people I know, they're all kind of contractors and freelancers these days. And it's a nicer model because businesses are tired of being burned by agencies. A lot of the ones I know have worked with 4 or 5, and they never really have a good experience. So, I mean, shit gives me a leg up, so I'm cool with it. But it's just interesting to see how much the management's gone to where pricing hasn't changed at all, or how they're kind of portraying it. So, I think it's time for a change, but they'll catch on once bad agency shit starts happening, probably.
Yeah, I don't think people are good and bad. I just think people do what they're incentivized to do. And I think that the percent of spend model is just a really weird model where it's almost like real estate. You guys know how real estate commissions work? It's crazy. Like if the house sells for more, that real estate agent makes more money. So it's like, how do you have that? So, I mean, transparently, when I was working at an agency, dude, we would have budgets and we knew stuff wasn't really doing great. Uh, but you want to hit your billings. And so but when I ran my agency, it was more of like what you're talking about, Dylan, of a partnership in the business. And you just have a really nice meaty retainer. And then you can tell them like that agency or that client you took from 100K to 50K, where it's like, this is better for your business. I'm going to make you more money at a more efficient rate versus an agency is essentially like, how do we increase billings? That's the whole incentive.
It also gives you a chance to prove yourself, because if you can lower a CAC like this example from 470 to freaking 140, 150,
Yep.
you're showing to prove a concept really freaking quick. So even though I'm getting half of what I would be getting paid right now, I know it's going to be even crazier for Q4 to where, hey, maybe they would have been paying me 10K, but now that they see this, oh, it's working. Now I'll probably be getting paid 15 to 18K off that one account. So, I mean, I'm definitely looking at it more from a long-term perspective of what that client is worth to me for the long term versus how much can I milk them out, out of the gate. So, and it's worked in my favor. I mean, I'm almost brutally honest. I mean, if I feel like something's not working, I'll just, hey, let's do one last month of a Hail Mary, and I'll connect you with somebody else who may be able to fit your business a little bit better than me. So luckily, it sucks. But the one thing that sucks about the model I have is it's not a volume-based model. So if I do lose one account, if it's a big account, that's a large part of your revenue that disappears.
Yeah.
But as long as you kind of just provide as much value and do everything you possibly can, it's definitely the odds of them dipping out, and having to pay an agency 2x of what they pay you to where it could 50-50 work. It's a lot more, on stress on them versus, maybe we give Dylan a little bit more time, basically. So it's fun, stressful. Media buying is stressful, though. That's kind of part of the game.
Media buying is stressful. And to be fair, I'm not saying all agencies suck. There's definitely a time and a place to have a percentage retainer, et cetera, et cetera. But there's definitely some unique people out there that are running unique things. And I think that media buyers are going to, again, turn into more of this like creative strategists, and the good agencies and the great agencies are going to learn how to generate value outside of charging people for audience testing and things of this, like just banana stuff where you're just like, really, that is just, it's almost criminal. But
you need to get your pixel set up. It's only cost $3K though. It's totally worth it,
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna hook up your Cappy real quick, but that's another like $2,000. It's literally like you're clicking buttons in Shopify. Like, yeah, it is what it is. Anywho, yeah, back in the positivity bubble. What's another hot take, Ash? You're on fire right now.
What do we feel about one-day view attribution on Facebook?
My thoughts have changed. I mean, not so much recent, but we just noticed, and I noticed this for 3 or 4 accounts, is whenever we have like 7-day click or 1-day view, I mean, I kind of really exclude the 1-day view window, because we notice a lot of spend is going into areas where we're already known, where people are going to convert either way. So if I'm telling Facebook I want to hit those people, it's going to, show more ads to those people who are already probably going to convert realistically. So, I mean, we're more or less limiting those really bottom of funnel people to where we're really using Facebook just for straight up new customer acquisition discovery. So, I mean, if we can stick to that click window all the way through, I'm all for it. Some accounts, we still do reporting for 7-day click, 1-day view, even though everything's optimizing for 7-day click, just so they can kind of see both ends of the spectrum. Even though CACs are like double or mighty different, it still works in their favor. So, I mean, I think it depends, but realistically, 1-day view, I think it's pretty stupid. I like 1-day click for low AOV items for most of my brands that are, $200 plus AOVs, 7-day click, just because it takes people, it's not an impulse buy by any means. But the way I see it is from who that ad's being shown to. I don't want Facebook to get the glory for somebody who's been to the website already, clicked on a Klaviyo email, done all that shit, just so Facebook can kind of get that cheap conversion. When in reality, it's not truly optimizing the campaigns for what we want it for, which is straight up new customers. And a good example is we were seeing for one of our accounts, we were seeing with 7-day click, 1-day view, 40% of the customers were actually new. Once we transitioned that to 7-day click only, that campaign was at an 80% new customer ratio. So it doubled how many new customers we were actually getting, and it didn't even affect our returning customer ratio at all. So, I mean, with us bringing in new customers, we're not seeing it as immediate, but we know from an LTV and, returning customer rate perspective, it's way better for the business. Even though it may look scary and make me look like my ads aren't doing as good, it's making the business flourish basically, which is how I've changed too, because you used to want to see good stats, but now I'm like, what's actually better for the business on the back end versus what ads manager or, one of these other platforms are showing me.
Hot take. That's the only correct answer.
I was. Have you ever seen that James Garfield, the old school? Like, I have nothing to add. Like that. That's the perfect answer. That's the perfect answer for me as well. I think that view through data is helpful-ish, but mostly just to pump your ego. And I think that your paid media should be mostly used on prospecting and incrementality. Like how can I get incremental conversions, and more so new people in the fold, and handing somebody an impression right before they're walking to the checkout is like, I don't know how meaningful that is versus actually generating new customers from your ads is 100% the path. And I also agree with your bifurcation of 1-day click, 7-day. I like 1-day click the best if you can make it work. But sometimes, to your point, you need a longer window because of the longer consideration cycle, where you might not buy a $250 thing right on that impulse purchase, where you might buy a $50 widget or something like that. So yeah, I don't know. It's brilliant.
To your point, right? Do you feel like, is it based off of the consideration window on the shopper's end, or is it the ability for you to just get 50 conversions in one day?
The latter, or for me anyways. I don't want to speak for Dylan, but for me, it's because I know I can't generate enough 1-day click conversions, and so Facebook's going to go try and find a buyer that doesn't exist, where I know I can find people that will buy within 7 days. And so it gives Facebook a little more leeway. Like, I'm asking it something more reasonable versus finding somebody that's going to buy that day. You're just going to be you're going to be stuck in the learning phase, Ash. You can't live there.
No, so that's the thing, right? Like, if you
just
were
bringing
right,
it back.
would there ever be a situation where you are getting 50 conversions in a day, but keeping it on 7-day click? Would there ever be a reason to do that?
Ideally, I'd always want to run an account at 1-day click. But there's just times where it's not feasible and the account suffers because you're just searching for customers that, quite frankly, just don't exist. And so you need to open up that window a little more. But I love the point about the view throughs, where it really starts to, because that's what Facebook's going to do. They're going to take the easiest win. It's the path of least resistance. And so going back to my incentives thing, right? Like, they're incentivized to show you that your ads are doing better than they are. And they did get that conversion, but are they really generating that demand from a new customer, like causal versus correlative?
What's funny about this too is, if we were looking at our 7-day click, 1-day view stats, we'll say our CAC was 135. Since we launched our 7-day click only accounts, our CAC is now on a 7-day view, 1-day click window, $105. So it's actually, in fact, impacting the 1-day view side without showing anything. So I was kind of shocked on that front, that it's actually making the account perform way better looking at the same reporting we used to, even though it's, completely optimizing in a different attribution window. So that's been an interesting finding, and I'm noticing that for everybody at this point. So just because you can't see it in Ads Manager, Brian Camo, I think his name is, in that Foxwell group, he was saying if you go into ads reporting and select 2 ad accounts, you can adjust all the attribution windows, 7-day click, 1-day click, all that kind of jazz. And after figuring that out, I'm like, this is kind of freaking cool, because I mean, it looks scary, but we're actually doing way better looking at the exact same reporting model the finance team looks at to kind of report on conversion value. Basically, just it's tricky, but it's doing a lot better stuff for the ad account and the business. So
yeah, love that.
You can tell. I mean, even when we were running like retargeting campaigns months ago, and just when Triple Whale came out with the Pixel, and actually seeing what was coming in, like all our retargeting campaigns had 1 day view, 7 day click, 1 day view, right? Because that's just what I felt made sense. Like if I'm retargeting, like somebody's gonna buy at some point. If they see this ad, cool. I just want it to be there, right? I want it to be on. When I was looking at Triple, right, click through whatever it is, or last click, there was like nothing coming in from my retargeting campaigns. But like Facebook, it's like, yeah, you have a 4 or 5x return, keep spending. And it's like literally, I think the week after we turned it off and nothing changed. If anything, our MER improved because we're just spending less for the same amount of money. So that's where I was like, okay, I'm definitely off this 1 day view completely. So
I
that's
got a
why, like,
hot
just
take for you.
retargeting in general. Yeah. So I was gonna ask you, are you running retargeting campaigns?
You're on fire, Ash.
A little bit. We don't spend more of a 10% of our budget on retargeting, sometimes 5%. For some accounts, we pulled it completely, with just all we exclude our purchasers, just because we know top of funnel is doing a little bit of retargeting too. So yeah, I was going to bring that up, but yeah, I don't. Even for an account I have spending 700K a month, maybe 3 or 4% of the budget's retargeting max. So I mean, it's pretty slim these days.
Is there like specific messaging for that, or like a specific goal for that campaign that you're like trying to measure for, or just straight up just retargeting?
Just retargeting. Now there are different messaging. Like we have DPAs, for example. Those are pretty custom in their own little bucket. So it's like last chance, get it before we sell out, like we always do. So, for the subscription brands, we start promoting a one-time purchase versus which are top of funnels all subscribe today. Whereas retarget, hey, not sure if you want to try it, try our sample pack or our one-time purchase option. So we do have custom messaging in that mix, but we don't spend nearly as much. Whereas I would probably say, if you would have asked me this 2 years ago, I'd probably say 70-30 top of funnel versus retargeting. So it's changed substantially, but we just really minimized our exclusions, try not to do too much stuff. Because we found if we, got too simple, too complex for 3 day, 7 day, 14 day retargeting buckets, which used to work killer, it's just too much. So I'd rather just exclude purchases and let her, if an ad works for top of funnel, let it retarget too. I don't care as long as it converts, and it's making us money.
Yeah.
Damn it.
I think my structure kind of changed a little bit after that as well. The only thing that we're running on retargeting is more so like awareness for retail. So like our vitamin shops will vitamin shop ads will just be running. Just I'm not looking to convert anybody. It's just straight up just views, and if they want to go vitamin shop, whatever it is, it's just awareness for them. And it's also good for them to see we're just investing, right? It's just a partnership. When it comes down to now removing retargeting on a conversion standpoint, like a direct conversion standpoint, what I found was at the top of the funnel, right? So my structure is literally scaling testing. In the scaling campaign, I used to have 3 to 5 ads, like max. Now I'm okay with running 8 to 12 ads because I know that this retargeting phenomenon is happening within that ad set. So I'm okay with like that many ads. Like even if like maybe the bottom like say like 3 or 4 are getting the most spend, I'm okay with the other 8 like getting minimal spend because I know it's retargeting to some level. So at least people are seeing different types of content, so that it's like you're not seeing the same ad, you're seeing, whether it's a different flavor for like the collagen, right? So you're showcasing everything. I rather have like top 3 really just taking all the budget, but I'm okay with the rest of it just like bringing in the cheaper conversions, and that's I feel like it's brought down our CAC a little bit and like helped stabilize. But I'm curious if you've seen the same thing. I know we've talked in the past, and you're like I'm ripping 3 to 5 ads, but curious what you think about that take.
It's interesting you bring that up because I have been noticing I'm putting more than what I normally recommend just for that exact same reason. Because you'll have 2 or 3 that get 80% of the budget, but then those 4 or 5 that are getting, $50 to $60 a day versus $800 to $900 a day. But those little ones are getting sales. So I mean, as long as that ad set as a whole is working, I'm cool
Yeah.
with it. I will say I have one account with maybe 8 to 10 ads active for top of funnel with just broad and then an interest stack, and it works great. Whereas for another account, I only have 4 to 5 ads active in there with like 20 off realistically, and that works for them. So it is case by case, but I am fine. You just got to make sure they're all winning ads, which after a
Yeah.
good amount of spend, they're going to work to an extent. So even if it's not getting budget, I'm going to leave them in there just because it doesn't have crazy CACs, and look at it from a
Yeah.
30-day window, it's going to look a lot prettier. So yeah, I'm in that same boat. I will say it's a little bit case by case per account for the most part, but
Fair.
I don't see a problem with having. It's when you start putting 8 to 10 ads, like tests in the mix, where I get kind of worried. But if
Yeah.
they've already proven themselves, then shit, feed the fucking beast.
Yeah. If
Yeah.
the budget's high enough, I have no, like, I mean, our scaling campaigns start at 5K, right? So like having 8 to 10, 12 ads in there, like you're not really hurting yourself, I feel.
One thing I noticed too is a lot of the ads for the accounts I have where I do have 8 to 10 in there. The 3 that have all the glory are the ones that have 700 comments,
That's
400
it.
shares. So I'm like, I kind of don't want to turn those off because people comment daily, it gets shared out. So it may not look as sexy, but I know it's doing something for the long haul.
It's the driver. It's the one that's driving the awareness. You're seeing all the social proof. I think we talked about this with Barry, right? 2 pods ago. I'm okay with my top performing ad, like top spending ad, having the higher CAC and letting the rest of the ads that are getting a percentage of the budget at a lower, like below average CAC, kind of bring our overall average down, right? So it's tough because I feel like people will go in, they'll see that and be like, oh, this CAC is way too high. Let me turn it off. Oh, and this ad that has like 10% of the budget has the lowest CAC. That maybe that'll be the winner. Like, but that's not the case, right? Like
Not the case.
there's a reason why Facebook is pushing here because it's has the highest estimated action rate, even though it has the highest CAC. Let everything else bring the CAC down. If you're getting leads on the website, convert those leads through email. And like that's why like looking at blended is so crucial. Instead of like, oh, this ad that has 90% of the budget has the highest CAC. Like if it's like slightly above average, like keep it going. But like obviously if it's like double, triple, then make changes. But I think people like tend to forget that you need to like look at it from the holistic view, rather than just like case by case.
And that's gotten harder these days too. We do a lot of pressure tests. So if like we're not sure how TikTok is truly doing, let's shut it off for 2 weeks, see what happens, keep everything else consistent from a spin perspective. And we always notice a change. So it's like, okay, maybe TikTok was working. It just doesn't look pretty.
Yeah.
So those pressure cooking tests really help from that blended aspect, because I wish I looked more on the blended side just because I don't see as many back-end numbers as I would prefer to. But whenever I have calls with clients, I'm like, how is it looking on the back end from y'all's perspective? What are the blended metrics across everything? So it's definitely fun. But that's also why I don't do like a percent of revenue model. It'd be cool. It makes fucking bank, but I don't see all the shit. So it's tricky sometimes.
Hey, to your point about the TikTok thing, like sometimes it, like you said, it's not pretty, right? Even with I think we were saying like TikTok is so view oriented that it can drive awareness in general and like make other platforms perform better, right? So when we're spending a good amount on TikTok, Facebook performs better. But let's say like even in platform or even in triple whale, like it shows that like it's not as good. But one thing that I started doing is I have say like a 75-25% allocation between Facebook and TikTok. My post purchase surveys, if the responses are within that same allocation, I know there's some like validity to keeping TikTok on, right? So if 25% of my new customers are coming from TikTok, but like on the platform like it's saying otherwise, I know that it's doing something. But if that ratio is off, like if 25% of my budget is TikTok, but only 10% of new customers are coming from there, then I know I need to make some adjustments. So this is something that I've been like kind of leaning into outside of just like metrics in platform and like on triple as well, just to have that secondary validation too.
Well, you're gonna love what we got coming next week, then Ash. Dylan, I wish I had more heat for you. I agree with everything you said. I think that retargeting is you need to be careful about it. You need to understand and have the economics for it. I ran accounts that I just cut off the retargeting because the economics just didn't make sense. Where if somebody's spending 50, $60, it's like, dude, like by the time you retarget this person, prospect this person, blah, 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 you're left with no money, especially because the margins were terrible in this business. I think it's brilliant, man. The way you think of things is just super spot on. I totally agree with you. And the one thing I would be interested for you guys to test, one thing I did was, because I had, you have those big winner ads that command all the spend. They have these comments, they have these likes, they have these shares, but then they kind of start to trickle off a little bit below threshold, but they're still commanding spend. What I would do is actually move that into what I would call a champions campaign. And I would just have a super high budget, but have a bid cap. And so in that sense, you still keep them in the game, but it's like the old veteran that can't play the whole game anymore. But when the market's good, Facebook will bet in this campaign. And so it's just like it's just sauce on the pie, in the sense where you still have your really nice prospecting, scale campaigns, etc. Then you have this champions campaign that it'll spend out, but it'll only spend out within that bid caps. And so you, on the good days, you're just raking in the money, and on the bad days, it might spend, $1. So like it won't spend that much, and you get this nice thing. And then the other thing that I think you sound like you're doing as well, but I would run ads across the funnel as well, or the same ad across the funnel, because even kind of to your point, Ashley, like the business objective of your vitamin shop, where it's there's a business objective outside of like the quote unquote direct conversion. It's kind of like the OG engagement, where those ads are usually going to be shown to your top users, your top buyers, et cetera, and you kind of juice that ad at the retargeting level to then make the ad in the prospecting level more efficient. But yeah, Dylan, you're on the tip, man. That is exactly how I think of it as well. I think it's really, really smart how you're explaining it.
I used to do that bid cap stuff a lot in the past. I'm an auto bid junkie, man. It's
shotgun surfing,
same,
baby.
Yeah, no, same. I'm just saying, like, when you have those really amazing ads with insane social proof, but they're starting to drag down the account because they're going to just constantly command the spend away from these other players. It's like, again, the veteran on the team that still wants the ball, where it's like, you're still good-ish in the right areas, but we need to just put you over here versus this young guns up and comer. Yeah, exactly. The young guns, the up and comer. Let's give them the ball more, and you can start to get that spend, but you're still going to have that veteran come in and make the clutch shot when the game is on the line, kind of thing.
I'll test it out. I'll keep you updated, because
try it out. Let me know what you think.
Yeah. I've been moving my scaling to cost captain. I've been able to scale a little bit better, so definitely try it out.
Yeah. All right, boys. I can't believe we're pushing up against it. Do you have any other questions, Ash, or I can get to the creepy question, or we got any more?
Let's hit the creepy question.
The creepy question. Okay, amazing. What was our last creepy question? I forgot. Not the autobiography.
You had a good one last one.
It was good.
Is it like
would you go
related, or is it just
back into the past or go into the future?
Oh, yeah. Back into the past or future. You were a past guy.
I said future because everyone else said past.
No, I said future.
I think we both said future.
Oh, we both said future, and Barry. Okay. All right. Alignment. Okay. So the creepy question today is, if you discover this beautiful island, you get to start a brand new society, you get to make all the rules, et cetera, what's the first rule you put in place?
Don't be a dick.
Look at that. That's a quick one. Boom. I'd live on that island.
Yeah.
I love the instinctual ansers. It's amazing.
It would be a dictatorship, obviously, but yeah, at the end of the day, no one wants to be around a dick, you can get so much more done.
That's a good societal rule. What do you got, Ash?
I feel like that takes the cake. Hold on, give me a second.
It's strong.
It is. That is very strong.
Need me to fill some time?
Yeah, please.
I would create more than you consume.
That's good. It's efficient.
So you always have a surplus in society.
Yeah, I think somewhere between those two, it's like just assigning roles. So there's no like anarchy, like, oh, I'm gonna do that. Like, no, like, here's what you're gonna do. Here's what you're gonna do. This is how we're gonna set up, and like just get life rolling. So I think just allocating roles and responsibilities.
That's a what?
Otherwise, there's anarchy.
That's a terrible answer. That's your first rule? That's not even a rule. What is that? To be fair, you carried this whole podcast, so maybe I should let this answer slide. But You've done great, but that
Dude,
doesn't sound
I
like
don't
a
know.
rule.
Oh, you're,
No,
I'll
you're
tell
maybe
you
good at
what, the
making
first.
crops. Oh, we're gonna have you pick up the horse shit. Then that makes
I'll
sense.
tell you,
You don't need to make crops anymore. You're
you
good.
know what your rule
damn.
needs to be: if you go to a vitamin shop, you got to take a picture and send it to Ash Milwani. How is that not the first rule? Unbelievable, Ash.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
All right. It's fine.
Dylan, this was
I'll let you
amazing.
slide for the other one. You gotta let me slide on this one.
Fair, but no, you crushed this podcast. You brought the heat. I really appreciate you carrying me. I'm still a little bit jet lagged for some reason. Like the 5 to 7 hour plus, plus 5 to 7 hours, it just messes me up. Like in Barca, I was still wrecked. Like I don't know, it's just like perfect to mess it up.
It'll be nice when you get home because you'll start waking up early.
Yeah, west is easy for me. I don't usually get too jet lagged like a day and I'm back. But when I come east, that 5 to 7 is just a weird space.
You know what I do to get rid of jet lag?
Tell me.
What I do is I usually get a double shot espresso and I'll drop an Adderall in there and I just throw it back and it's non-existent. And I do that, daily life. But when I travel and I'm jet lagged pretty hard, I just get really fucked up on amphetamines. You know what I mean?
This is not medical advice, folks. The marketing advice, definitely listen to. The other one, we'll just bleep out that part. Dylan, tell the people where they can find you. You have an incredible feed. Are you taking clients? This time is yours, my friend.
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. It's at Marketer Dylan. I'm pretty picky with who I take on these days. I'll be upfront. I can always connect you with somebody. I got a badass network, but yeah, I mean, I'm always open to the wild and fun niche brands and stuff that are super different. So yeah, I mean, hit me up. I'm always down to look at accounts. I love to provide value, even if we don't work together. It's cool to see what other people are doing. So I mean, I'm an open book. I'll tell it how it is, and I feel like I'm pretty easygoing. And yeah, you never know what could happen.
And you're quite the prolific gamer as well, right? You want to drop your Xbox handle or?
Liquid Sloth 73. Find me.
Seriously?
Yeah, find me on. Yeah, we're gonna have a sloth for my birthday party too, so don't forget. I'll keep you updated.
Gosh, the petting zoo. I have to come through.
Yeah, but yeah, I game a lot. Hell Let Loose is a fun one. I'm definitely one of those media buyers who lays low in a cave and flies under the radar, and that fits my model a lot more. So it's fun.
Amazing, dude. Thank you for joining us. I'm so glad. We'll have to do it big in Austin. We have a podcast studio, so we'll bring you in next time. We'll do it in person. It'll be fun.
I'm super down.
Ash, you know what to do. Tell the folks.
You need some collagen in your life, a little bit of beautification.
Oh yeah.
Go to your local vitamin shop. See if you can find some Mavi there. Take a picture, send it to me.
Yes.
Tag me in it, tweet me, whatever you need to do. But just support your boy. Also on Mentor Pass.
Amazing.
If you need help with anything paid, anything related, hit me up there. And just follow me on Twitter at Ashvin Melwani. And yeah.
Amazing. Thank you, Ash. I love that's my favorite part of the show. All right, folks, that's it for us. If you do want to get more involved with Triple Whale, go to triplewhale.com. We are on the Bird app at Triple Whale. And then we have a wonderful whale mail or a newsletter called Whale Mail that goes out every Tuesday, Thursday. You can subscribe right on our Twitter profile. And that's it. I look forward to the sloth petting zoo. I'm super stoked for that. And then I'm actually really stoked to get back home. London has been fun. The road show has been amazing. Thank you for everybody that came to the road show. You guys are all awesome. And that's all we have for you. Thanks again. If you do enjoy this podcast, tell your friends, tell them to subscribe. It's also available on YouTube if you want to see our pretty mugs or any podcast catcher that you use, and you can hear us come through with that sweet audio nectar. And then that's it, folks. Thanks so much. Thanks, Dylan. Thanks, Ash. We'll talk soon, guys.